with silence, a kind of silence that comes only before something terrible happens. Earth hangs in space like it always has, full of light, movement, and people who believe tomorrow will be normal. But far beyond the moon's orbit, something enormous hides in the darkness. It is not a meteor, not a lost ship, not a passing shadow. It is the fleet of the Galactic Empire, a power so large that humans never even imagined it existed. They appear without warning, without a message, without any sign of peace or negotiation. Their warships form a line around Earth, surrounding the planet like a ring of fire. On Earth, most people never notice anything. They go to work, talk to families, scroll through screens, and argue about small things that feel big to them. A few telescopes catch strange readings, but the signals are dismissed as errors. No one expects an attack from the stars. Humanity always believed it was alone. Humanity had no idea someone was watching, waiting. Measuring dot in a small asteroid base on the far side of the solar system, a quiet technician is performing a routine task. He checks heat levels, inspects fuel lines, and listens to old radio signals that bounce across empty space. He enjoys the silence of the station. It feels peaceful, safe, far from Earth's noise and pressure. He has no idea that this isolation will save his life. As he adjusts a broken panel, an alarm suddenly flashes across his screen. It is not the usual warning of drifting rocks or low power. It is a radiation spike so intense that the station shakes. He looks up through the glass dome of the control room, and what he sees makes his heart freeze. A bright line cuts across the black sky, followed by another, then another. At first, he thinks they are meteors. But meteors do not move in perfect formation. He zooms the telescope and sees the impossible. Hundreds of metal structures, each larger than any human ship, drifting toward Earth. Their engines glow like blue suns. Their shape is not human, not familiar, not friendly. They move with purpose. They move with certainty. They move with no fear of being challenged. He tries sending a message to Earth, but the signal refuses to connect. The static is not natural. Someone is blocking communication. That alone tells him the truth. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not an accident. It is an attack. Meanwhile, on Earth, government satellites finally detect the incoming fleet. Panic spreads through control rooms. Leaders gather for emergency meetings. Scientists argue over possibilities. Military officers shout orders. No one knows what the Empire wants. No one knows what it demands. Even if someone tried to talk, the Empire does not answer. Their ships remain cold and silent, like they do not consider humans worth speaking to. The first strike comes without sound. From orbit, the Empire fires a beam of energy toward Earth's largest cities. The ground shakes. Buildings fall. Oceans boil. Skies turn white. Within seconds, millions disappear. Some try to run. Some try to hide. But there is nowhere to go. The attack is too fast, too massive. The technician watches all of it from the asteroid base. His hands shake. His chest feels tight. He wants to scream, but no sound comes out. He can see whole continents burning. He can see lights go out one after another. He can see Earth, his home, being erased like it never existed. He knows he cannot help. He knows he cannot turn back time. He can only watch. The Empire does not hesitate. After the first strike, they target water sources and energy plants. They destroy cities that have not yet fallen. They erase all forms of communication. They want Earth quiet. They want Earth empty. They want Earth finished. Human ships try to fight back. A few small fleets launch into space. But their weapons can barely scratch the Empire's armor. The Empire counters with precision, removing every ship with a single blow. Human pilots die without understanding what hit them. Even the most advanced human weapons feel like toys compared to the Empire's technology. People on Earth gather in shelters, hoping the attack will stop. But the Empire does not stop. Their plan is simple. They want no survivors. They want no resistance. They want no future for humans. In space, the technician finally receives a signal, not from Earth, but from a moon base near Jupiter. The message is weak. Only a few words break through the static. The voice sounds terrified. It says Earth is lost. It says the Empire has destroyed everything. It says survivors must hide, not fight. It says humanity must scatter. A long silence follows. The technician sits alone in the cold control room. He feels helpless. The lights on the panel blink and flicker, but none of them matter anymore. The world he knew is gone. The people he cared about are gone. He is one of the last humans left, but even in his despair, something inside him refuses to fade. He looks again at the burning Earth. He studies the movement of the Empire's ships. He watches how they form patterns, how they shift positions, how they gather in clusters after firing each strike. He begins to understand something. The Empire's weapons are powerful, but they require energy cycles. Their shield pulses. Their coordination follows a predictable rhythm. They are not invincible. They are simply much stronger. As he watches, tears blur his view, but he forces himself to keep observing. He knows this moment might be the only chance to learn something. Humanity may be broken, but if even a few humans survive, they will need knowledge. They will need someone who understands the enemy. Down on Earth, a storm of dust and ash rises. The oceans glow with heat. Forests vanish. The Empire scans the surface, checking for movement. They classify Earth as neutralized. Most of their fleet begins to leave the orbit, moving on to other systems. Only patrol ships remain behind, circling the dead planet like vultures. The technician lowers his head. He whispers to himself even though no one can hear him. He says that this is not the end. That even if humans have lost their home, they have not lost their spirit. That people have survived worse things before. That the universe is bigger than this attack, and humanity is stubborn. Humanity does not disappear easily. He accepts that he cannot save Earth, but he can save something else. Information, memory, hope. He sends a secret, broadcast to every old channel he can access. The message is short. It says humanity is alive. It says the Empire is not perfect. It says survivors must move to hidden zones and stay silent. It says they must wait for the right time. He does not know who will hear it. Maybe no one. Maybe only a few. But he sends it anyway, because someone somewhere might be listening. Hours pass. Earth cools. The Empire grows quiet. The technician looks at the stars and realizes he must leave the asteroid base. The Empire will eventually find it. He gathers tools, old equipment, and any food he can carry. He prepares a small shuttle. The engines are weak, but they might work long enough to reach a hidden outpost deeper in space before leaving. He looks one last time at Earth, the planet that raised him, taught him, shaped him. The planet that is now silent. He feels pain, but he also feels a kind of fire inside his chest. A fire that says this story is not over. A fire that says humans will return. A fire that says revenge is not about anger, but survival. He turns away and starts the engine. The shuttle drifts from the station, leaving behind everything he once knew. Far from Earth. Scattered survivors begin receiving fragments of his broadcast. Small groups hidden in mining tunnels, abandoned stations, and forgotten colonies hear the message. They realize they are not alone. They realize someone is still out there, fighting to keep humanity alive. The technician does not know this yet. He only knows he must keep moving, keep watching, keep thinking. He may be quiet. He may be ordinary, But he carries something powerful, a hope strong enough to rebuild what was lost. And as his small shuttle slips into deep space, something changes inside him. He feels a purpose growing. Humanity may have fallen, but that fall is only the beginning of something greater. He does not know how or when, but he knows one thing with absolute certainty: humanity will rise again. Kind of loneliness that does not come from being alone, but from knowing that almost everyone you loved or recognized is gone. The technician's small shuttle drifts through deep space, far away from Earth's ruins. The inside of the craft is cold, dim, and cramped. Each time he breathes, a faint cloud of fog forms in front of him. The engines hum softly, but he can still feel the silence pressing in from every direction. Space feels heavier now, like the universe itself is grieving. He keeps checking the navigation screen, making sure he is still on the path toward the hidden outpost inside a nebula. It is one of the oldest outposts humans ever built. Many believed it did not exist anymore. But he knows every rumor, every forgotten blueprint, every abandoned corner of human history. He believes the outpost is still there, waiting in the shadows dot as he travels. He listens to the radio, hoping someone will answer his weak broadcast. Most of the time he hears only static, but now and then a broken voice comes through. Sometimes it is a frightened whisper. Sometimes it is just coordinates. Sometimes it is crying. He saves every signal. He writes down every location. Even if he cannot reach them, maybe someone else can. It is the first sign that humanity is not fully gone. People are still out there, scattered, silent, hurt, but alive. Far across space, on a tiny transport ship hiding behind a dusty moon, a small group of survivors also hear the technician's broadcast. They have been hiding since the attack, terrified to move. Their ship is old and slow, with weak shields and almost no fuel left. But when they hear the message, something changes. They start talking again. They start planning. They start hoping. The technician does not know it yet, but his message has become the spark that begins to reconnect the broken pieces of humanity. Meanwhile, the Empire continues moving through nearby systems. Their ships are huge and silent as they glide past planets and moons. They scan for human signals, destroying anything they find. But most survivors stay quiet. They keep their engines cold and their radios turned off. They know the Empire could erase them in seconds. They must stay hidden, even if it means drifting in darkness for weeks. The technician's shuttle enters a rough patch of space. Dust clouds swirl around the ship, and the engine struggles. The nebula is close, but the path inside is dangerous. He pilots carefully, avoiding the denser sections so the shuttle does not overheat. As he moves deeper, the stars slowly fade behind thick blue gas. The nebula looks like an ocean made of mist, glowing softly in the dark. Any normal traveler would get lost here, but the technician memorized star charts long ago. He knows where to turn and where to slow down. After hours of navigating through the glowing clouds, he finally sees it. A shadow in the distance. A structure hidden inside the nebula's densest layer. A forgotten human outpost. It has no lights. No sign of activity. No warm signal. It looks abandoned, maybe even dead. But as he gets closer, he recognizes the shape of the old docking ring. It's real. It's still here. He approaches slowly, using only small bursts of thrusters. He does not want the Empire to detect anything. When the shuttle finally attaches to the docking ring, he lets out a long breath he did not realize he was holding. The station's metal doors grind open with a rusty groan. The sound echoes through the empty hallway. The outpost feels like a ghost ship. Every step he takes echoes like a reminder of the past. Inside, dust floats through the still air. Old lights flicker weakly when he tries to turn on the power. The generator sounds tired, like it has been asleep for too long. He walks through the long corridors, touching the cold walls. He remembers stories about this place, how it was built during early space exploration, how it was abandoned after better stations were created. No one ever thought it would be needed again. But now, it might become humanity's last safe place. He reaches the main control room and begins checking each system. Most are broken or offline. But the basic life support still works. The air is thin, but breathable. The communication array is old and weak, but repairable. The storage rooms contain a few tools, a few empty containers, and old manuals. It is not much, but it is a start. He spends hours fixing things. He cleans rust-off wires, reconnects broken circuits, and replaces dusty panels. It is slow, careful work. The kind of work only someone with patience and calm hands can do. Each small thing he repairs makes the station feel more alive. After a long time, he sits down in the main chair and turns on the biggest screen. It flickers, static, then slowly a star map appears. Human colonies, mining stations, old supply routes. Some of them are already crossed out, marked as lost. Others blink red, signaling silence. Only a few blink with a faint yellow possible survivors. He stares at the map for a long time. He understands that the survivors are not in one place. They are spread across the galaxy, each group too weak to fight alone. But if they can connect, if they can gather, if they can share knowledge and resources, then maybe they have a chance. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. He sends out another broadcast, this time stronger thanks to the outpost's equipment. He speaks slowly, clearly. He talks about unity. He talks about survival. He talks about hope. He does not mention revenge. Not yet. Revenge needs strength, and strength needs time. First, humans must gather. First, humans must live. Hours later, a weak reply arrives. Then another. Then another. The messages are short, broken, shaken, but real. People are listening. People are responding. People are searching for each other. Far away, a small group trapped on a rocky moon decide to leave their hiding place. They trust the broadcast enough to take the risk. They start repairing their tiny ship. On another planet, a team of miners use old tunnels to hide from Empire patrols. They hear the technician's words and begin planning to reach the nebula. On an empty ice world, a single pilot turns on her engines for the first time in weeks, heading toward the signal. The technician does not know all this is happening yet, but he can feel something shifting. Something subtle but important. Humanity is a broken chain, but the links are slowly reconnecting. Every message he receives gives him more energy. Every signal gives him more purpose. As he works, he remembers scenes of Earth, the oceans, the forests, the crowded cities, the laughter he heard in markets, the small arguments he had with strangers, the simple things that made humans who they were. He knows they will never get Earth back, not the way it was. But they can rebuild somewhere. They can rise again. They can earn a future with their own hands. The nebula protects the outpost from detection. The Empire does not search here because the thick gas blocks most scans. It is the perfect place to gather survivors. And so, slowly, humans begin to navigate toward it. Some move in silence, switching off everything except life support. Others hide inside abandoned wrecks to avoid patrols. Everyone travels with fear in their hearts, but also a spark of hope. As days pass, the first small ship appears on the station's radar. It is damaged and leaking air, but alive. The technician rushes to the docking bay and helps guide it in manually. When the doors open, a small group steps out. They look tired, hungry, and scared, but the moment they see the technician, they feel something different. Relief, connection, proof that they are not alone. More ships arrive slowly over time. Not many, just a few at first. Survivors come from different worlds, different backgrounds, different situations, but they all carry the same pain and the same determination. They gather in the outpost's main room, sharing quiet stories of what they lost and what they escaped. No one cries loudly. The sorrow is too deep for that. But each person feels stronger just being near others who understand. The technician listens carefully to every story. He memorizes details. He takes notes. He learns about Empire movements, about surviving ships, about unused supply caches. He begins to understand the bigger picture. The Empire thinks humanity is gone. They think humans are too weak to rise. They think the survivors will die on their own. They are wrong. Humans survived because they learned to adapt. They learned to hide. They learned to endure. They do not need powerful weapons yet. They do not need giant fleets. They just need each other. And now they finally have that again. As the outpost becomes slowly more active, the technician looks around the room filled with survivors. He sees fear, yes, but also something else. Something bright. Something stubborn. He realizes that these people, this unity, this spirit, is the beginning of humanity's return. The first step in a journey that will one day shock the galaxy. The Empire took Earth, but it could not take the human will. Deep inside the nebula. In an old forgotten station, humanity takes its first breath again. Quiet, fragile, but alive. And from that small breath, something bigger begins to form. A future, a purpose, a spark that will grow into a fire no empire can stop. In the soft glow of the nebula, where the hidden outpost slowly changes from a cold, forgotten shell into a place filled with quiet life. More survivors continue to arrive, each one carrying a different story, a different fear, and a different spark of hope. The technician, who once sat alone in darkness, now hears footsteps and voices echoing through the halls every day. The sound of people breathing, talking, fixing things, and sharing food feels strange at first, almost unreal, but slowly it becomes comforting. The outpost is still old and damaged, but it is no longer empty. One small ship after another docks at the ring, bringing engineers, miners, pilots, cooks, and even a few children who hold on to their older siblings with tired eyes. No one raises their voice. No one laughs loudly. Everyone carries the weight of loss. But even in the silence, there is a feeling growing inside the old metal walls. Something warm, something determined. The technician spends his days fixing equipment, repairing broken consoles, and learning everything he can from the new arrivals. Each survivor knows a piece of the galaxy that he does not. Some come from mining colonies and know how the Empire captured or destroyed entire stations. Some come from old military posts and know which planets fell first. Some come from civilian ships that drifted for days through wreckage. Together, they gather details that begin to form a picture of the Empire's behavior. Slowly, a pattern emerges. The Empire does not hunt every survivor. Instead, it destroys anything that sends strong signals or moves openly through space. It targets power sources, communication towers, shipyards, and anything that could help humans grow again. It is not searching for scattered groups. It is preventing the rise of a united force. This gives the survivors a small advantage. If they remain silent and hidden, they can move without being noticed. They can rebuild slowly. They can learn. Every evening, the technician sits in the main control room with a group of survivors. They talk softly while checking the star map and updating the list of possible safe zones. The station's lights flicker, but the room feels warmer with people inside it. Sometimes someone shares a memory of Earth, a story about a street vendor, a favorite school, the smell of rain, or the taste of warm bread. These small memories carry more power than any weapon. They remind everyone why they are alive, why they must continue, why giving up is not an option. But tragedy still exists. Not every message they receive is hopeful. Some are distress signals that end too quickly. Some are coordinates from places that later fall silent. The survivors feel each loss as if it were their own. The technician records every signal anyway. Even the broken ones matter. One day, a new ship approaches the outpost, moving fast and erratically. The radar shows heavy damage. The survivors rush to the docking bay to help. When the ship lands, the doors open and a pilot stumbles out, collapsing on the floor. His suit is torn and his breathing is weak. A few people carry him to the medical room. He survives, but just barely. When he finally wakes up, he tells a story that changes everything. He explains that he was part of a small group hiding in an abandoned fuel station near a gas giant. For weeks they remained undetected, gathering supplies and avoiding Empire patrols. But then something unexpected happened. One of the Empire's ships malfunctioned and crashed on a nearby moon. The survivors watched from a distance and noticed that the ship's shield core flickered before it fell. It was the first time any human had seen an Empire ship fail. The pilot continues, saying they attempted to approach the wreck. But before they could reach it, an Empire patrol arrived and destroyed the entire air. His ship was the only one that escaped, barely jumping into hyperspace. Everyone else died. The room falls silent as he finishes. Not because of fear, but because of something else, a spark of interest, a weakness, a flaw, a sign that the Empire is not perfect. The technician listens carefully. He asks the pilot about the shield flicker, the timing, the color, the pattern. The pilot explains everything he remembers. It is not much, but it is enough. The shield did not fail because of an attack. It failed because of an overload from inside. The Empire ships use massive energy cores that must cycle power at specific intervals. If someone could understand that cycle, even a small human ship could damage an Empire vessel. The survivors exchange looks. This is the first real opening they have seen since Earth fell. Over the next days, the technician studies the information obsessively. He re-watches the pilot's damaged recordings. He adjusts old simulators. He calculates shield pulse times. His eyes grow tired, but he keeps working. The survivors bring him food and offer help, but he refuses to stop. He knows this knowledge could become humanity's first tool to fight back. At night, when the others sleep, he sits alone in the control room and stares at Earth's position on the star map. Nothing moves there now. The Empire patrols are fewer. The planet is nothing but ash and broken shores. But he does not look at Earth with sadness anymore. He looks at it with purpose. He begins working on a plan, not a big plan. Not a grand war strategy, but a small plan, one step at a time, a plan to test the Empire's weakness. A plan to see if humans can strike back, even if only once. He calls a group of volunteers to the control room. These are the most experienced pilots and engineers among the survivors. He explains his findings in simple words, using drawings and simulations to show how the shield pulse works. The group listens carefully. One pilot shakes her head slowly and says it is risky. Another says they do not have strong enough ships. Another says the Empire will crush them if they are wrong. The technician does not argue. He simply says that someone must try. If no one tests the weakness, humanity will remain forever powerless. If they test it and fail, they will lose a few ships. But if they succeed, humanity will gain something priceless. Hope, backed by proof. After a long silence, the group agrees. They begin working on small strike vessels, using parts from old mining ships and abandoned cargo craft. They reinforce the hulls with leftover alloy. They install pulse cannons that barely function. They make everything stable enough to fly, even if not perfect. The outpost echoes with new sounds, tools clanking, engines humming, metal being cut and welded. The survivors feel nervous, but also excited. For the first time since the fall of Earth, they are not just hiding. They are building something. They are preparing to act. When the first test ship is ready, the technician steps back and looks at it. It is not beautiful. It is not even close to a real warship. It is small, uneven, patched together. But it carries something more important than good design. It carries human will. A small team takes the ship out of the nebula, flying quietly through empty space. They move toward a moon where an Empire sensor drone passes every few hours. The goal is not to destroy the drone, only to test the shield pulse timing using the ship's scanner. The technician watches from the control room as the ship approaches the drone. His heart beats fast. Everyone in the outpost holds their breath. When the drone appears, the team activates the scanner at the exact moment the pulse cycle dips. The readings spike. The drone flickers faintly, as if hit by something invisible. It does not fall, but it stumbles. It stumbles. That alone is enough. The survivors inside the outpost cheer quietly, not loudly, because they know one thing now. This weakness is real. Humans can hurt the Empire. They can break their shields. They can fight back. The test ship returns safely. The technician looks at the data again, confirming everything. His hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but from the understanding that this moment will be remembered in the future as the first small crack in the Empire's armor. That night, the survivors gather in the dining room. For the first time, someone laughs softly. For the first time, someone smiles without forcing it. For the first time, the outpost feels less like a shelter and more like the beginning of a new world. The technician sits alone for a moment, thinking about everything that has happened. The survivors, the signals, the weakness, the first test. He realizes something important. Humanity is not waiting for revenge anymore. Humanity is preparing for it. Not out of hatred, not out of survival. Out of memory. Out of the unbreakable desire to stand again. Inside the glowing nebula, in a forgotten station filled with tired but determined people, the spark of humanity's return grows brighter. The fire has not begun yet, but the first flame has appeared. And no empire can stop what comes next. The next morning came quietly, almost too quietly. The sky outside the settlement had a pale blue shade, and long shadows from the cliffs stretched across the ground. The young man woke up before the others, not because he had slept enough, but because his mind was still full of everything that had happened the day before. The strange signs on the rocks, the sounds in the forest, the feeling that something had been watching them all night, none of it had left his thoughts. He sat near the small fire they had kept alive. The flames were low, but the warmth felt steady. He rubbed his eyes and looked at his gear. Nothing seemed out of place, but something in the air felt heavier than usual. It was the same uneasy feeling he had sensed since they entered that region. He heard footsteps behind him. It was the younger member of their group, stretching his arms and yawning loudly. He sat beside him and asked if he had slept at all. The young man gave a half-smile and shook his head. He didn't want to worry anyone, but he also knew everyone could sense that something was not normal here. Soon, the rest of the group woke up. They shared water, checked their tools, and looked at the map drawn from their last exploration. Their goal for the day was simple yet important: follow the trail they found near the old rock formation and find out where it led. It was supposed to be a safe route, but after everything they had seen so far, no one felt relaxed. As they prepared to move, the young man carefully looked toward the forest. The trees were tall and quiet, with leaves that barely moved. It was almost as if the forest was holding its breath. He didn't say anything, but his eyes remained sharp. He wanted to make sure nothing caught them off guard. They started walking toward the east side of the valley. The path felt narrow at first, but widened as they moved forward. Soft sunlight passed through the high branches, creating bright patches on the ground. The air was cool and carried the scent of wet soil. Birds chirped somewhere far above, but even their sounds seemed distant compared to the silence of the day before. After an hour of walking, they reached an area filled with tall stone pillars. These pillars stood in a pattern, almost like they were arranged on purpose. The young man paused and looked closely at the carvings on the stones. They were old, but the marks were clean and deep. They didn't look like something created randomly by weather. They looked intentional. One of the older members of the team moved next to him and ran his fingers along the carvings. He said it might be a code or a warning. The young man nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand the symbols, but he could feel that they meant something serious. The group continued moving. The pillars grew taller as they walked forward, and soon they found a narrow opening between them. It looked like an entrance to something hidden. The young man stepped inside first. The moment he entered, the temperature dropped slightly, and a faint echo of their footsteps bounced from the stone walls. The place felt ancient. They followed the passage, which eventually opened into a large circular space. At the center was a massive stone tablet covered in more symbols. The air felt heavier here, almost like the space carried memories of something long gone. The young man walked slowly toward the tablet, feeling a strange pull inside his chest. As he stood there, he noticed something unusual. Some symbols on the stone felt fresh, almost recently carved. He didn't understand how that was possible. Who had been here before them? He glanced around the chamber. There were no footprints except their own. He placed his hand lightly on the stone. The surface was cold, but the moment he touched it, he felt a soft vibration, like a pulse. He pulled his hand back immediately, and his heart began to beat faster. He looked at the others and told them what he had felt. Some looked confused, some concerned. Before anyone could speak further, a faint rumbling sound echoed through the chamber. It came from deep inside the walls. Dust fell from the ceiling. The young man motioned for everyone to stay alert. The sound grew louder, then stopped suddenly. Silence returned. They waited for a moment, unsure whether to stay or leave. The young man made the decision. They needed to continue forward, but cautiously. Whatever was in this place, they needed to understand before it became a danger to the entire settlement. They found another narrow path behind the tablet. This one sloped downward. As they walked through, the air became colder. The passage opened into another chamber, smaller and darker. In the middle was a broken device made of metal. The parts were old, covered in dust, but the design looked advanced. The young man knelt and examined it. The technology didn't look human-made. The material was smooth and too light. He gently lifted a small piece and turned it in his hand. It gave off a faint glow. He showed it to the others. They stared at it, unable to hide their surprise. Suddenly, a soft clicking sound echoed from somewhere behind them. The young man instantly stood up and signaled everyone to be quiet. They listened carefully. The sound became more frequent, like someone or something walking toward them. The young man grabbed his tool and moved slowly toward the entrance of the chamber. His breathing slowed as he tried to catch every sound. The footsteps grew closer. The rest of the team formed a tight circle behind him, ready for anything. A shadow appeared on the wall. It was tall, thin, and moved slowly. The young man held his breath, waiting for the figure to fully appear. When it finally stepped into the chamber, everyone froze. It wasn't human. Its skin had a pale metallic color. Its eyes glowed faintly. It looked at them without speaking. The young man tightened his grip on his tool, but did not raise it. He didn't want to provoke anything. The creature raised one hand in the air as if signaling peace. It took a slow step forward. The young man felt his heartbeat pounding in his ears, but he stayed still. The creature pointed at the broken device, then pointed at the glowing piece in the young man's hand. The young man understood. It wanted that piece? He hesitated. Was it a trap? Or was the creature simply trying to fix something important? Before he could decide, the chamber shook again, harder this time. Cracks spread across the ceiling. A large piece of stone fell to the floor with a loud crash. Dust filled the air. The creature looked up, then back at the young man, and made a quick gesture -leave. It was warning them. The young man signaled his team to move. They headed back through the passage as the chamber rumbled. Stones fell behind them. The creature stayed where it was, staring at the broken device as if it were protecting something valuable or dangerous. The group rushed through the narrow paths and finally reached the surface. Fresh air hit their faces. They ran several steps away from the stone pillars before stopping to catch their breath. The valley behind them trembled, and small pieces of rock continued to fall from the cliffs. The entrance they had used collapsed completely, sealing everything inside. The young man stood there, breathing hard, still holding the glowing piece tightly. Everyone looked at him, waiting for him to say something. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were calm. He told them quietly that whatever was inside that place wasn't simple, and they were only beginning to understand it. He also said they needed to return to the settlement and report what they had discovered. As they started walking back, he kept turning the glowing piece in his hand. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew it was important. He also knew one thing for sure: whatever lived inside those chambers would not stay hidden forever. And now, everything was connected to him. The walk back to the settlement felt longer than usual. Every step carried a strange weight, like the ground itself was watching them. No one spoke for the first several minutes. The wind blew softly through the valley, but even that familiar sound didn't calm the tension that hung over the group. The young man kept the glowing piece in his hand, turning it slowly as he walked. Its soft pulse moved in a steady rhythm, almost like it was alive. The youngest member of the team finally broke the silence. He asked the young man if the creature inside the chamber had looked angry or scared. The young man shook his head. He said the creature didn't seem angry at all. It looked focused, like it had been waiting for something. And maybe they had interrupted a task it had been doing for a very long time. Another member asked if the creature might still be alive under all that collapsed stone. The young man didn't know. The image of the creature still standing there, pointing at the broken device, while the ceiling cracked above it, stayed clear in his mind. The creature had wanted them to leave, not because it was afraid of them, but because it knew the place was unstable. It had helped them escape. That thought troubled him more than anything else. When they finally reached the settlement, the sounds of people working filled the air. Children ran between the houses, workers repaired equipment, and the smell of cooked food drifted across the main area. It all felt normal, peaceful even. But the young man's heart still carried the vibration of what he had seen. The leader of the settlement approached them quickly, noticing their tired faces and the dust on their clothes. He asked what happened. Before the young man could speak, the older member of the group stepped forward and explained everything about the stone chambers. The carvings, the strange device, and the creature. The leader listened without interrupting, his face growing more serious with each detail. When the older member finished speaking, the leader looked at the young man and asked to see the glowing piece. The young man hesitated for a moment, then handed it over. The leader held it gently. The glow reflected in his eyes. He turned it slowly, inspecting every angle. After a long pause, he said this piece was unlike anything they had found before. It was not metal from their own planet. It was lighter, stronger, and had a strange warmth, almost like it had its own energy source. He returned it to the young man and told him to keep it safe. The young man placed it carefully into a small pouch on his belt. Even inside the pouch, he could feel its faint pulse. The leader instructed everyone to rest for the day and said they would discuss their next steps after sunset. The team nodded and separated. The young man walked to the small hut where he stayed. The moment he entered, he sat down and let out a long breath. His hands were shaking slightly. He rested his palms on his knees, trying to calm himself. He closed his eyes for a moment, but the image of the chamber and the creature kept returning. He could still feel the cold stone under his fingers, the trembling floor, and the creature's silent warning. He wondered what would have happened if they had not left in time. He wondered what the creature had been trying to fix or protect. At sunset, everyone gathered in the central area. Torches flickered in the wind, and the warm orange glow lit up their faces. The leader stood on a raised platform and called for silence. The settlement grew quiet. He began by explaining what the team had found. Whispers spread among the people. Some looked scared, some excited, and others simply confused. The idea that a creature had been living underground for who knows how long was difficult for anyone to fully understand. The leader raised his hand to settle the crowd. He said they did not know if the creature was dangerous or peaceful. But one fact was clear. The world beyond their settlement was filled with things they still did not understand. They needed to stay calm and make smart choices. He turned to the young man and asked him to step forward. The young man did, feeling dozens of eyes on him. The leader asked him to explain exactly what he had seen and felt when he touched the stone tablet and the glowing piece. The young man spoke slowly, carefully choosing his words. He didn't want to exaggerate or leave out anything important. He described the cold surface of the stone, the strange vibration, and the moment he first saw the creature. He explained how the creature had raised its hand not in attack, but in a gesture that felt like peace or caution. He also explained how the creature pointed at the device and then warned them to leave. People listened closely. Some were surprised that the creature had not attacked them. Some were confused why it had let them escape. The young man finished by saying he believed the creature did not want to harm them. It seemed more afraid of the collapsing chamber than of their presence. The leader thanked him and faced the crowd again. He said they needed to prepare for anything, but not act out of fear. They would send a separate group to study the valley from a safe distance. No one was allowed to approach the collapsed entrance until they understood more. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the young man remained behind for a moment. The leader walked up to him and asked if he felt all right. The young man nodded, but admitted he was confused. The leader placed a hand on his shoulder and told him that confusion was normal. But he also said something else sometimes. The world chose certain people to discover things meant to change the future. The young man didn't know what to say. He never thought of himself as someone special. He was just someone who wanted to protect his people and explore the unknown. But hearing those words made him feel a strange pressure in his chest, not fear, but responsibility. Later that night, he sat outside alone, looking at the sky. The stars shone brighter than usual. The glowing piece in his pouch pulsed softly, in sync with his heartbeat. He took it out and held it up toward the sky. The glow looked almost like it was responding to the starlight. He wondered if the creature came from somewhere out there, or if the device was part of something bigger, something ancient that existed long before the settlement was built. He wondered if it was a warning, a message, or a key to something hidden. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. It was the youngest member of the team. He asked if the young man couldn't sleep either. The young man smiled faintly and shook his head. The younger one sat beside him and asked if he thought the creature would come back. The young man didn't answer right away. He looked at the glowing piece and said if the creature survived the collapse, it might try to repair the device. And if the device was important enough, then yes, the creature would return one day. The younger one swallowed and nodded slowly. He said he hoped it would come back peacefully. The young man hoped the same. The wind blew across the settlement, carrying the faint sound of distant animals. The night felt calm on the surface, but the young man knew that something beneath that calm had shifted. Something had awakened when he finally returned to his hut. He placed the glowing piece under a cloth, but its faint light still passed through. He lay down, closing his eyes, but sleep did not come easily. His mind was busy with questions, and deep down, he knew something else. The story was far from over. In the morning, new plans would begin. New dangers. New discoveries. And whatever waited beneath those stones, it was connected to him now, whether he liked it or not. The morning arrived quietly, but everyone in the settlement felt a strange tension in the air. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. People woke early, gathered water, repaired tools, and prepared meals, but their minds were somewhere else. The news of the underground creature and the glowing piece had spread, and now every person wondered what it meant for their future. The young man stepped out of his hut, rubbing the last bit of sleep from his eyes. The glowing piece rested safely inside his pouch, and even without touching it, he could sense its faint warmth. It was like carrying a tiny heartbeat that did not belong to him. He walked to the main area where the leader had called for an early meeting. A small crowd had already gathered. Some looked nervous, some curious, and a few seemed excited. The leader stood on the platform, speaking quietly with a group of elders. When the young man arrived, the leader noticed him and motioned for him to come forward. The crowd grew silent as he approached. The leader began by explaining that scouting teams had gone to the valley early at sunrise. They had stayed far from the collapsed entrance, but observed something strange. From underneath the broken stones, small lines of light had begun to leak out, thin and slow, almost like cracks glowing from within. People whispered among themselves. Some wondered if the creature was alive. Others feared the underground chamber held something dangerous that was now waking up. The leader raised his hand to calm them. He said they needed to study these signs carefully. Fear would only make things worse. He explained that they wanted the young man to help guide the next investigation, because he had seen things no one else had seen. But this time, they wouldn't go too close. They would observe from a distance, set sensors, and gather information safely. The young man agreed, though a part of him felt uneasy. But he also knew he couldn't run from this. He had been part of it from the beginning. Maybe he was meant to see it through. A small team prepared to travel back to the valley. The young man wore light gear, carried rations, and kept the glowing piece with him. As they walked through the forest, the trees whispered softly above them. Birds flew from branch to branch, unaware of the danger unfolding in the deeper parts of the land. The journey took some time, but eventually they reached the ridge overlooking the valley. They stayed hidden behind large stones and looked down. Even from a distance, the collapsed entrance was visible. And just as the scouts had reported, faint lines of light seeped through the rubble. The glow was dim but steady, like something underneath was slowly powering up. The younger member of the team whispered if they should move closer. The young man shook his head. He recommended placing the sensors around the ridge first. They needed information, not risk. The team agreed. As they worked, a sudden tremor shook the ground. It wasn't strong enough to knock anyone down, but it was enough to make them freeze. Dust rose from the collapsed entrance. The glowing cracks brightened for a moment, then dimmed again. The older member of the team whispered that something was definitely moving under there. The young man stared at the rubble, his mind racing. He wondered if the creature was struggling to escape or trying to repair the device inside. He tightened his grip on the pouch where the glowing piece rested. The piece pulsed faster now, responding to the valley like it recognized something. The team finished planting the sensors and quickly retreated to the safer side of the ridge. They didn't want to stay any longer than necessary. As they made their way back, the young man kept glancing behind him. Something didn't feel right. The air felt charged, like a storm was forming without clouds. When the team reached the settlement, everyone gathered around to hear what they found. They explained the glowing cracks and the tremor. The leader listened carefully, then ordered everyone to stay alert. He placed guards at the perimeter and told the scouts to prepare for rotation shifts. That night, the settlement didn't sleep normally. People stayed awake longer than usual, whispering, wondering, worrying. Even the children sensed the tension. The stars above shimmered like cold eyes watching from afar. The young man couldn't relax. He sat near the fire pit, holding the glowing piece in his hand. It pulsed softly but quickly, almost like it was breathing faster. A few hours before dawn, a sharp sound echoed from the distance. Not loud, but clear. A deep rumble followed. People rushed from their huts. The leader stepped outside, eyes toward the direction of the valley. More rumbling came, heavier this time, shaking the ground slightly. Without hesitation, the leader ordered the scouts to follow him. The young man joined them, along with several others. They moved through the forest quickly, their hearts pounding. When they reached the ridge, they froze at what they saw. The collapsed entrance was no longer collapsed. The stones had shifted outward. The glow was brighter now, shining through the gaps like steady rays of light. The ground around it was cracked, as if something had pushed from beneath with immense strength. The young man's pulse matched the rhythm of the glowing piece in his hand. He felt a strange pull, like the piece wanted to respond to whatever was happening below. He held it tighter. Suddenly, the glowing cracks expanded rapidly. The stones collapsed outward in a burst of dust and light. The team shielded their eyes. The entire valley flashed white for a moment before fading back into dim morning light. When the dust settled, the entrance stood open. No creature emerged. No sound came from within. But the entrance was clear and glowing softly, almost inviting. The young man felt a strange ache in his chest. He stepped slightly forward, but the leader placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. The leader said no one would approach yet. They didn't know what had caused the collapse to reverse itself. They stayed hidden, watching for movement. Minutes passed. Finally, the leader whispered that they should return to the settlement and plan their next step with care. Back home, people gathered, anxious for news. When they heard that the chamber had reopened on its own, many gasped. Some were frightened, some were curious. Some wanted to move the settlement farther away. The leader held a long meeting with the elders and the scouting teams. After hours of discussion, they agreed on one thing: a young man would need to return to the chamber, but not alone. A larger team would accompany him. They would carry equipment, lights, and protective gear, and they would move slowly, analyzing everything. The young man didn't argue. He knew this moment would come. The glowing piece had not stopped pulsing since the collapse reversed. Something in that chamber recognized him, or needed him. The next morning, a team of 12 prepared to journey back. The settlement watched them leave, faces filled with hope and fear at the same time. When the team reached the entrance, the glow was softer now, almost calm. The air near the entrance felt warmer than the rest of the valley. The young man stepped forward slowly. Each step felt heavy but guided, like he was walking toward a truth he couldn't avoid. They entered the chamber. The walls still held the carvings, but now they glowed faintly. The place felt alive. They walked deeper, their footsteps echoing. When they reached the final chamber, they froze. The creature stood there, not trapped, not dying. It stood tall, calm, and waiting. The creature looked at the young man first. Then its eyes shifted to the glowing piece in his hand. It raised its arm slowly, not in warning this time, but in recognition. The young man felt the glowing piece pulse so strongly it almost vibrated from his hand. He stepped forward carefully. The creature extended its hand, pointing again at the broken device behind it. But the device was no longer broken. It had rebuilt itself. The creature gestured toward the panel gently, and stepped back as if offering space. The young man swallowed and approached it. As he neared the panel, the glowing piece began to shine brighter. He understood then the piece wasn't just part of the device. It was the key. He held it out slowly. The panel opened with a soft hum, revealing a small slot perfectly shaped for the piece. He hesitated for a moment, then placed it inside. The chamber lit up instantly. The carvings on the walls glowed brighter. The ground vibrated faintly. The creature stepped back, watching silently. The young man felt a rush of fear and awe. But he didn't step away. The device was awakening. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something that had been sleeping for centuries. The creature looked at him with eyes that held no anger, only understanding. And the young man finally realized something simple, but life-changing. This wasn't the end of their story. This was only the beginning.